Hey gang, welcome back to Joe Daddy's Garage. Today's video is, well, it's part 3, let's say, in the Fangled series. Now in the previous video, I cut loose the back half of this 68 coupe that had some damage in the rear, and this car is becoming a donor for the build of a 68 fastback, known as Fangled. And in that effort, what I'm trying to do is remove the whole upper portion of this car. So again, the back section's cut loose, and today what I want to do is get loose all the front section, the A-pillars and all of that, and try to keep it together. Now this is similar to something you may be doing if you're going to do a conversion. The new pieces that come in like dynacorn parts, they come with a whole side, and it comes with the A-pillar and the forward section here, which is your toe kick, and then you can add in later on a new cowl and firewall and that sort of thing. So for my plans, because I want to salvage all this upper section to use on another car, I want to save this A-pillar and this maybe the toe kick, and the cowl is going to come with this as well. Now I don't know if I'm going to actually use this cowl later, but for this purpose I want to be able to take all of this off as an assembly. So I will be salvaging the connecting points here, these little filler pieces that go between the apron and the cowl, but everything else, the firewall itself, I don't plan to save. I don't know if I'm going to try to save this apron or not. Both of these are okay, but they make pretty decent replacement ones already. And on this other side over here, this cowl is, or this apron is actually damaged. So we'll see what happens as I progress through this. But there will be some grinding, drilling, different things like that. And I don't see it being that difficult overall to get this apart. Once I have all that apart, I'm going to remove both of the rocker panels. From there, I really don't have much use at this point for the rest of this. So it's going to have to go outside and go somewhere else. And then hopefully I can get started on the actual build of the 68 fastback. So let's continue tearing this apart. Okay, so as I'm starting this process, what I want to do is remove the splash guard. And surprisingly enough, these were in decent shape. I know that the plastic and rubber usually fails, but the bolts that were holding it, those are 3/8, and those come out okay. And there was a lot of undercoating holding this in place as well. So that's always a good thing, to have undercoating seal up those gaps. And then here I am sanding down the paint that is on top of the spot welds. Now this extension piece, I like to save these if I can, because the aftermarket ones, they're made kind of weird. They're made bigger than the originals. It's almost like they've made them as an overlap piece. Now I was doing this and trying to save the cowl at this point, so I was being very careful, or more careful than I probably needed to be, because I found out later that the cowl had issues and it really wouldn't make much difference. So you can just drill straight through these holes, or through the welds if you wanted to, and save yourself a little bit of effort. These also tended to hang on a little more towards the back underneath where the apron ends. So I ended up using the panel buster and knocking the welds off or loose, and then also cutting some of the parent metal for the apron. Again, this is in an effort to save this piece, and to me it's worth it, but many people, I think, would just probably go with the aftermarket ones regardless of how poorly they actually fit. So a little bit of effort here, and I was able to get this loose. There was another weld on the inside there that I just hadn't noticed, and sometimes they're there and sometimes they're not. So once I get this loose, I'll move on and get started on the other side and try to get it apart as well. More to come. There we go. There it is. Okay. So, is it worth saving this? Yeah, it's debatable. But even in this condition, I can straighten this out, and I still prefer this over the aftermarket ones. So to me, yeah, it's worth it. Okay. Now that I have these upper pieces cut loose, I want to work on this lower section. So I need to get these spot welds out here at the base of this kick panel, and these spot welds here at the base of the A-pillar. Now this panel, the spot welds are on the outside of the rocker panel. These are pretty obvious. That'll be similar to how I separated everything back there. And if you look on the inside, here's the inner rocker panel, and then here are where this panel overlaps. So that should be fairly simple, I would think, to get all those loose. But then I'll have to separate the firewall. Now, I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to cut this just yet, because I'm debating on keeping this apron, as I mentioned before. So I may take the plasma cutter and cut on each side and leave that flange so I can separate the welds off of that later. I'll cut above the torque boxes, and I may have to separate, it depends how I do this. I may have to look at separating some welds here with the kick panel, because those, I think, overlap part of the torque box, but we'll find out, and I'll get started on this. So once again, as I start working on the kick panel, I'm taking a sanding disc and highlighting where the welds are. By doing this, you can just see the impression of the spot weld itself. And then here I'm using an oversized bit. I'm not exactly sure what size this is. This is one of my just larger bits that I have. And the goal here is to take away some of the parent metal that holds the panel to the rocker panel. And by doing it as I was, where I was rotating the drill around, it just helps create a bigger kind of hole in effect. Then I took the panel buster once again, and I started separating the welds from the inside. And here at the front, as I was doing this, I was kind of surprised to find some of these other welds. I know that there are welds that hold the kick panel, let's say, to the torque box, and sometimes you just forget about those. So these three here, I think there's three, maybe four, that they are connected to the torque box. So again, I drilled and wobbled around the drill bit to try to make the hole, or to take away the parent metal of the kick panel. Then I found some other welds at the bottom here, and using the screwdriver, I was able to get underneath and start separating that. The end result is I need to get inside of this panel, because I was trying to do it from the inside of the car, but I was not able to get very far or make good progress. So I ended up moving on. I decided I would take loose the B pillar or the A pillar, and when I did this, I was surprised, sort of surprised, that there were two spot welds that were ahead of this one that I'm taking loose, that they were already broken and rusted. Whew, okay. So everything up here is loose except one weld right here, which I'm going to take a Ziz wheel and cut into it from the inside. It's hard to show you a camera angle from the inside when I'm doing this, but that's the only spot right there that's still hanging on. So, as I was looking here, these two spot welds popped all by themselves as I was taking this stuff loose. So I'm going to pause for a minute, because I really wanted to get this loose first, but I also want to do something else. I'm going to add some reinforcement. Now, this car, I'm not worried about the car at all, but just for simple purposes of keeping the structure to where it should be. So in a previous video I had shown where I had taken some measurements from the torque box up to a point that I drew a line and gave a mark where I knew where it was supposed to be this way. Now the other thing I'm doing is I'm measuring from the top of the striker mount, just getting it right up against that corner and coming forward and trying to stay as square as I can, and basically just to the back edge of the A-pillar on a straight plane, it's right about 46 inches. I mean, it's super close to that measurement. Like right on the corner, it's 46. So what I want to do to preserve as much of this as I can, I'm going to weld in some square tubing. I wanted to take care of getting the welds loose first on the inside, and then I will come in here and weld in this piece to keep the length the same, or the door opening the same. I don't think I'm going to need much else for that, so I'll get that welded in, and we'll go on from there. I'm being kind of lazy. This is my light gauge wire. But it'll do. It'll do. Now that I have the inner structure welded together, I went ahead and started cutting loose some of these other welds. I did have to use a Ziz wheel on the inside to break that one loose, and then I realized as I was doing this that there's also the braze that is holding the A-pillar to the rocker panel. And so I had to use the panel buster on the front edge of the A-pillar. And here I'm just working my way back through these welds to get the welds loose from the kick panel. And then I worked my way up from the bottom, trying to make room and get the panel in there, or get the chisel in there. And I realized that I had the tire in the way, so I went ahead and turned the steering wheel so that I could have a better swing at the hammer. Now this worked. I did find some other spot welds that had to come loose. And, you know, it's just part of the process as you're doing this, finding those things. Some of them are pretty well hidden. So once I got those two loose, that kind of freed up the panel a bit more, and I was able to get the panel buster up inside of there to break loose the other two that were again connected to the torque box. Then there was one more, so I had to get it loose as well. But you know, that's just part of the process. As you're doing this, you may find some welds that you just didn't see before. I also used the Ziz wheel to cut loose part of the inside there just to save the panel as much as I could. And then once I got this last one loose, that's all I needed to do, and it was ready to go. Well, I've made decent progress on this side. As I mentioned, I welded in that bracing to keep the length the same, and I've broken loose the welds here. Now this little bit of mangled metal on the bottom I'm not too worried about. This kick panel is nice and solid, and I can rebuild the bottom half of that if I, you know, intend to save this as it is. So I'm going to work on the other side. However, I've discovered that the cowl is not good. So I was starting to prep this area over here, and I was taking a screwdriver and knocking off undercoating and different things, and I got into the cowl. I don't know how well you can see that, but there's it's rusted through. And then I found it's rusted through here on this kick panel as well. You know, they sell these panels. I don't know if I'm going to try to save this directly or not right now, this kick panel. But I still need to get the A-pillar loose, break these welds regardless, and then get this upper section cut loose. Kind of disappointed. I was hoping that I could maybe save that cowl, but I don't see any reason to try to save it at this point. So once I get all this off, again, I'm going to be working on getting the rocker panels off. So hopefully I can get all this apart, and we can soon get this lifted off of the main body. Now I've moved on to the driver's side, doing the same thing, exposing the spot welds so that I can take the drill and weaken up the top of the welds. And as I wobble it around, it makes the material, takes away some of the parent material that is part of the A-pillar and also the kick panel. And these things are pretty much the same from 65 through the 68. And then in 69, they changed the kick panel. It's more of like an air box on the outside. So I was using the screwdriver to break these welds loose. It comes in pretty handy because it's narrow. And I was driving it through this area here, and I got it stuck. And I thought, you know what? I should be able to just knock this back out. And I tried to and realized, oh, wait, it's just a screwdriver. So I had to get a pair of vice grips and clamp onto it and take the shaft of the screwdriver back out and put the top back on. So this screwdriver has been pretty handy. I'm surprised that it's held up as long as it has for the abuse that I'm putting on it. And here I am doing the same thing, breaking loose the kick panel, exposing the spot welds, and just working my way through the panel to get everything loose. Now, again, this panel may not be saved, but I want to try to keep everything together just to keep the A-pillar, the firewall, and the windshield posts, all that stuff as solid as I can while it is set aside, because eventually I will try to put this onto the 67 coupe that I have that has all the rust issues. So I want to be able to have this sit and not be at risk. So here I am welding in again the square tubing to keep the door frame opening square, and once I get that done, I can take it apart. Well, I have everything separated on the bottom on both sides. I did find some more rust through up here on the firewall. I knew the firewall wasn't going to be saved anyway, but I plan to do some cutting here with the plasma cutter and isolate what I can. And I'm still going to try to save this apron. The other one I'm not too concerned about because it's banged up anyway. But I'm going to do some cutting here, and hopefully I can get it all apart. I also want to point out that I'm using something new today, and that is a set of these. I picked these up off of Amazon. These are a Yes Welder product, and these are meant more for welding and cutting. My other glasses I didn't really like them, so this is going to get tested out as well. It does have a variety of settings here on the end. Your shade, sensitivity, and delay, and then whether you're welding or cutting and whatever. So we're going to give these a shot. Hopefully they work and do what they're supposed to do. These things are working great. I keep hearing a lot of clunks and pops. There's a lot of stress on this thing. Okay, let me tell you, these made a world of difference. I like these a lot. Now, as you can see, I have, or maybe you can't see, I lifted up on everything, and it is loose. And when I lifted it, it actually kind of pushed out a little. And I'm not surprised at that, because this car is under a lot of stress, a lot of load from the impact. And when I was cutting things loose, I'll show you up front here. When I was cutting the firewall loose, look at that, how that split apart. It actually bowed forward on the firewall. So this thing is under all kinds of different stresses. And there was stuff popping and, you know, just making weird noises. So I'm going to go have lunch, let the smoke clear in here, and see if I can't get this off today. I think I have a plan. You know, as I do this stuff by myself 99% of the time, I have to figure out ways to make things happen. So I have rearranged some stuff around the garage, and I'm going to move the main body to the right side underneath, or basically in line with the Mach 1. I have this air hoist that I've used many times, and I have attached some straps to the A-pillars and also to the center section. I don't have enough straps to do around the roof in the back here, so I think this will be fine. This doesn't weigh that much, it's just awkward. Now the plan will be, I will lift it up with the hoist. I'll have to have the garage door open, and from there I will roll the body, or the chassis, let's say. It's going to go back underneath the Mustang, that one, and then this will end up on my trailer, which will then leave the building. So I have disconnected the steering column from the dash, and I'm going to see if I can make this happen. I didn't think about the dollies, but we'll see. Wrong way. That worked. Now to get this out of the way. Yeah, I'm gonna have trouble with this dolly. There we go. Easy peasy. call that a success. Now that the top section is off, I still have the wheelhouses on both sides, and I decided I will just take the handy dandy plasma cutter and eliminate both of these. I didn't want to have them in my way, and the sharp edges or the rough edges from being cut could be a problem. Something could snag on you. So I decided to knock down all the edges from that flange that was left over from the wheelhouse. The plasma cutter works pretty well, and those goggles that I got really made a huge difference in using that tool. So again, knock down the edges and move on from there. So at this point, I have cut off the wheelhouses. I just wanted to get that stuff out of the way, and I'm going to work on getting the rocker panels off. Now, the thing is with doing this, taking these rocker panels off, it's pretty boring, right? So what I'll end up doing is drilling out the welds here that go straight from the outer rocker to the inner. So there will be a hole all the way through, more than likely. And back here, I'll probably do a couple different things. I can't drill here simply because I can't get a drill in this direction. However, I will likely either, I haven't decided yet, either I will drill on these spot welds, or I may just take a grinder and grind them off. And either way is going to work, but I don't need to bore you with all that. A couple different ways I've done this, either with a drill, or I have this little belt sander here that I've used in the past. Super handy. I could come in right here and just knock down the weld itself, and then come back and use my chisel and separate it. So that's the goal, at least to get the upper section off, and then I'll remove what's left of the wheelhouse back here, and then from the bottom, simply enough, I will likely just get underneath and drill. It's not really going to make much difference. These have to come off anyway, but I'll try to show some of it as I make progress, but I doubt that I'm going to film much of this just because it's kind of a boring process. But I'm pretty happy with where we're at this point. Well, with the hole in the floor pan, it makes it easy to stand inside of the car slightly. I did start grinding through these welds as I was anticipating doing a different technique, because when I did the Cobra Jet, I saved what would be the look of the factory welds that were on, within that channel of the rocker panel. And then as I went on and started separating everything else, I realized that I need to do some cutting here. So I used the Ziz wheel to make some cuts in there and break the welds loose. But then I decided I'm going to change direction, because I don't need to save or make this appear to be original, because the whole car is going to be custom built anyway, and it's not going to make any difference. Help me, Mr. Cool. Help me. Okay, I've been working on this car. Obviously, you already know what's going on with it. And I started separating the welds up here on the rocker panel. And I got to thinking about it, because when it comes time to weld this rocker panel onto the new floor pan, I'm going to have to weld through this channel. So I need to have holes here, because I'm not going to drill holes in the new floor pan or the new inner rocker. And also the convertible pan has the interior rocker panel as well. So I may change my tactic just a little on taking this apart. This is working. It's tedious, but I think I'm just going to go ahead and drill through these, enlarge the holes, and if I need to do any other separation otherwise, maybe up front here or something, then I will do that. But there's no sense in grinding and grinding and grinding when I could just drill some holes and probably save some time. So I'm going to continue to work on that. So I want to show you a detail. As I'm drilling through both of these panels, I start off with just a regular type of drill to make a pilot hole, let's say, and then I'm coming back with this step drill. And this is just a cheap step drill from Harbor Freight, and the measurements are 1/4, 5/16, 3/8, looks like 7/16 and a half. And typically whenever I do a hole that I'm going to weld shut later, I do 5/16. But I'm going to take advantage of this step drill, and when I go through the holes, I'll go through 1/4, 5/16, maybe even to the 3/8. I'm not sure just yet. I've been doing it a little bit, haven't been paying much attention, let's say. But I don't want to go all the way through the second piece of metal. I don't want to come all the way through the rocker panel to make a bigger hole than I need. So I will run this in. So there's 1/4 inch. I hope you can see that okay. Run the 1/4 inch in. So that's the first step. And then I'll go to what should be the 5/16. Okay, now I have a 5/16 through both panels. And now I'm just going to use the next step and only go into this inner panel. And that way I preserve the diameter on this inner or the outer rocker. So I'll just skim this and take away some of that material, but not go all the way through. So I'll do this on every one of these. And then whenever I come back and separate this, and I don't have all this loose on this end, but I can get in here with the chisel and you can see that's already separated. So take advantage of that step drill and save your outer panel. Make the hole only as big as 5/16 is what I usually use. Now I'm taking the drill and starting basically pilot holes so that I can come back with the step drill. Those step drills are okay for stepping up a hole, but they're not good for making the initial hole. So I have a couple different drills. I have some cordless and I have the air drills. I have a couple different ones of those. So I just kind of swap them out as I go. Now this made it a lot better, and I talk about how I use the step drill to remove some of that material, but sometimes a little bit of that will hang on, and I use a cutoff wheel to eliminate some of that. Now you have to realize when these cars are put together, there was probably a system to figure out how many welds they wanted to have on top or on the bottom of these rocker panels. Now I've talked about this before. There's variations to these. I've seen a difference of I think 8 or 10 spot welds from one side to the other, and you know it's just the workers who were there on at that time period. You're talking well over 50 years ago, where these guys would just, hey, my job is to do this, and so they would have to do these spot welds in a certain period of time, and some of them maybe the number count was 27. I don't know the specifics, but they may lose count on the way. They may get distracted while they're doing this. And you know, some of these spot welds are not even an inch apart. Some of these you've got 3 or 4 inches between them, and I think they were just more concerned with having, let's say, a minimum number of spot welds than a specific spacing. Because modern cars, you look at them, and it's all built by a robot, so it has precision spacing on all of the spot welds. And with the collision industry, whenever we would work on cars, we had to make sure that whenever we did a repair, we had to put back the same number of spot welds that were in the car originally. You weren't supposed to put in any extra and you weren't supposed to put in any less. And the reason for that is it's a liability issue. When a car gets repaired, and if somebody adds a weld, it makes it too strong. If they don't put enough welds in, it's technically too weak. And so the insurance companies, they can come back and sue you for not building the car correctly if they really wanted to. Now, as I'm moving on, I'm using different tools here. I'm using the sanding tool to expose some of these welds at the front. This area here, it's really hard to get. You don't want to drill this because they're not really spot welds. They're more of a surface weld. And as I work my way through and get those loose, they come apart pretty easily when you get behind them. Now I'm underneath the car, and again I'm using the sanding disc to expose the welds, and now I'm using the cordless drill just to create a pilot hole so that I can come back with the step drill. And you know, these things just take time. You have to, you can't get in a hurry, and you don't want to abuse what you're doing and destroy something in the process. So here I get all these holes stepped up, and then I was able to work my way from the top and take the panel buster to break the spot welds. You can see all the dirt and debris, sand and stuff just falling out of this rocker panel. Now these rocker panels, as we know, they're made with galvanized metal, so they tend to last and remain in good shape unless something else inhibits that, you know, that process that damages that galvanized material. So I just continued on, and I had to touch up a couple of those welds to break them loose a little easier. And I didn't realize how much the camera would be shaking with the with me hitting it. I had it actually resting on the tire as I was filming this. So I just continue on, work my way through these, and here the rocker panel is almost completely loose. Just a few more spot welds to get to that point. And then once I have it out of the way, we can take a look at the inside and see the condition of it as well. So there it is. Cut that, and it's off. One side done. Well, we now have a loose rocker panel for the passenger side. And I've pointed out this before, this metal is galvanized. So whenever you're welding on this, make sure you wear a respirator or you have a fan blowing. You don't want to breathe this stuff. You can see inside, good shape. There is a little bit of rust right here, but that's going to be pretty minor. I'll wire brush that up and treat it. I did remove the wheelhouse, and basically this is what's left of the wheelhouse. And so that was in here, and just hit it with the chisel and just kept busting it loose till it came out. Now you'll see they have sprayed like a undercutting material, probably came through this hole right here in the back, and it may not have done much of anything besides nearly block off the drain holes that are stamped into the metal. So sometimes the best ideas are not the best ideas. So at this point I will get the driver's side off and maybe take a look at that as well. I also wanted to show you that, you know, it's a shame this car got wrecked. The floor pans we know were bad, but being wrecked and have everything bent and tweaked and out of shape, the inside of these torque boxes, surprisingly enough, there's no rust through, which is good, but just kind of surprising to see in any of these cars. We all know that they rust, like the battery boxes and all these different places. And if this car was from up north, it would have been a lot worse. This side as well, there's a little, there's some surface rust and a lot of cobwebs on the side of the frame rail. And this torque box is actually bent. And I don't know if it's from somebody trying to jack it up or maybe from the impact, because all this stuff is distorted. And yeah, I'll get this other rocker panel off and we'll continue on. So once I get that off, the rest of this can go somewhere else. Well, I did a little hammer and dolly work to straighten out the flanges, and I noticed something. I was cleaning up all the debris down here on the floor, and I found this wrench. This thing is pretty rough. It says drop forged, and I think it said Westminster or something like that on it. Kind of hard to read. My guess is it fell through one of these two openings, because there's really nowhere else this could go along the length of this. And this must have just been laying in there, rusting away, and it fell out. So, I don't know what I'm going to do with that yet. It's a Fangled wrench. Okay, so on the other side, I was doing the same thing. Separating these welds, and I'm making good progress. I'm not going to probably finish today taking the rest of this off. I did use the panel buster and knock off the wheelhouse. I will still have to separate it. It looks like it's hanging on a little bit better on this side than it was on the other side. Again, here's the only two places that wrench is going to fit. Look at that, that barely fits in there. So, yeah. Okay, the plan now, I will finish getting this rocker panel off and then make some decisions as to what my next steps are going to be. As you know, I have the boat trailer, which I plan to put the one-piece floor pan on and then start building up from there. Again, I'll be putting these rocker panels on in place of the dynacorn ones, which don't fit as well, and that is where I'm going right now. So I need to get things organized. I need to get this, what's left of this car, out of here, and get the trailer and the floor pan set up and get them in here so I can start doing all that work. Now, I'm not sure how far I'm going to get in that process. I may do a pre-build, just kind of a test, you know, put it all together. People tend to like to see that stuff. So I may do that sort of thing where I assemble it all up and just do an overview of the pieces and parts. I know that the one corner on the roof panel was slightly bent from shipping, so I'll have to work on that, and I may or may not do it at this time. I don't know yet. That's where we're at. Now, I want to thank you for watching, and I especially want to thank my patrons who support me in this effort. It's because of them that I make these videos, to be honest. And if you're interested in becoming a patron, there is a link in the description below. Follow that link and see if it's something for you. If not, that's okay too, but I just want to point that out and thank them. Also, anything that I endorse or use, there will be links down below, whether it's Amazon or Evolution Power Tools or anything like that. So you can follow those links as well if you want. But that's where we're at. Oh, those goggles, those plasma cutting goggles, fantastic. I do like those a lot. I will be using those more and more. So they're also listed down below. But that'll be it for this video. Again, thank you for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves. See ya. Thank you, Mr. Cool. You've been a big help today. There we go.